next up, we have an important topic that was certainly lively at Vive and HIMSS over this past month. And then because of the Becker's healthcare article in the Wall Street Journal article this week, it's a topic that's much more important than ever. As those of you who may have read, and I'll pop it in the chat box here in a moment, but Becker's Health a couple of days ago reported that, building on the Wall Street Journal article, that some U.S. intelligence agencies picked up chatter on Russian chatbots and Russian chats, encrypted, unencrypted, whatever, that attacks on U.S. hospital systems were now in play as a part of the ongoing war in Ukraine and the ongoing geopolitical situation with Russia and the U.S. and the West. And so cybersecurity, which is always talked about at HIMSS and obviously at Vive, this was their first annual meeting, was a topic there as well. Cybersecurity is now front and center for U.S. hospital systems, health plans, and it should be for life science companies, given the fact that they're now working in a world of really, really important vaccinations and treatments for COVID. And certainly one of the leaders in the U.S. healthcare system around this is Jennings Aske. Jennings, thanks for joining, especially on such short notice here today, from New York-Presbyterian, Chief Security Officer. Jennings, let's kick off just 2 minutes about your background and your history with New York-Presbyterian and what New York-Presbyterian does.
Sure, great. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk about this topic, which, given my role as Chief Information Security Officer, clearly means a lot to me. As a bit of background, I'm actually, I came into InfoSec kind of in an interesting way. I'm an attorney, licensed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And about the time I graduated from law school, there was this need for lawyers who could spell computer, thanks to HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, things like that. So as someone who built computers in their spare time and cared about healthcare, technology, and policy, I just kind of drifted in this direction. And basically, I've been the Chief Information Security Officer for the 16 Health and Human Service agencies in Massachusetts, University of Massachusetts Hospital System, Partners Healthcare, and now MGH Brigham, and also now for NYP. I've been here about 7 years. Really, in the course of my career, I've seen healthcare's interest in cyber, or I should say in information security, pivot from being about compliance to cyber. And one of the messages that I've always tried to lead with is that just like hospitals had to kind of learn that, hand hygiene was important, we've got to think about cybersecurity as being part of patient care. If the integrity and availability of the medical record is not, not there, you can't take care of the patients. And certainly the recent spate of ransomware attacks, including those that were targeted by Russian threat actors in the fall of 2020, just highlight that, we're so dependent on software in terms of how we deliver care to patients. We've got to make cyber right up there with other things we do in terms of how we think about patient care.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, we have of course, the 2008 case study of John Halamka running Harvard's health system, when one of the servers went down because someone in radiology tried to upload a 60 megabyte file and took out the entire EHR at Harvard for 3 days, and they were running around with 18-wheelers backing up with paper charts to keep the system going. And the EHR was literally down for 3 days, and they were trying to figure out how to do things analog again, which was a nightmare. So it ultimately, when you think about this, Jennings, you obviously have a number of different systems in place to protect the systems against a hack, any kind of hack, much less Russian. But talk a little bit about what you would recommend that CIOs and CSIOs do when their hospital systems, maybe that aren't as large as NYP, in order to protect themselves.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, I had the fortune, I'm using that term with air quotes, so to speak, of talking to folks at University of Vermont as an example. They were one of the hospitals that were victimized by the wave of ransomware attacks in 2020. I also sent team members to help a hospital in New York City that was attacked. And one of the things that we've learned from talking to both federal officials and these hospitals is that they were missing some basic controls that every institution, whether you're a hospital, you're any, frankly, business in America at this point, you need to have. And those kind of controls are They're a little costly at times, but you need to have them. And, one of the first things I would say is that you have to assume you really can't trust anything with an IP address. You have to assume that every computer, every person, every server, every web service has an identity, and you have to secure it. It's just kind of the reality of 2022. And that starts with things like investing in email security. You might be an Office 365 customer. Microsoft has good tools for securing email. Other companies have them as well, and you need to invest in them. Email is the number one way that we're attacked as a hospital. Second, you can't trust passwords alone. You have to implement multi-factor authentication everywhere. And I'd recommend you do that in your personal lives as well, because what we're seeing are some of the attacks go against our personal identities, and they're used to break into our corporate identities and attack our organizations. I know it may seem like a pain to do more than a password, but it's just kind of the reality of where things are. The other thing I see organizations unfortunately doing is they don't invest in modern, what I'll call endpoint security. So think of that as antivirus. Traditional antivirus is just not useful against ransomware. The bad guys evolve ransomware constantly, and you need more modern products that actually evolve along with the evolution of the attack vectors that are coming in. The two other things that really recommend, organizations have people that support them, whether they're external or they're internal. And these are what I'll call privileged actors. They're the people that have the accounts that have the keys to the kingdom. You've got to lock those accounts down. And there are platforms that are specific to securing your database administrators. You should be asking your key vendors. Maybe you have vendors that support medical devices on your network. That's an attack vector. And if you go back to like even the very infamous attack against Target, the way the bad guys got in was they attacked the HVAC vendor and broke in, moved laterally across the network. So you've got to think about your suppliers that have access to your corporate jewels, if you will. And then the last thing I'd say, it's really important you hire ethical hackers to emulate the attacks you're going to face. And they will tell you if they can break in. And that's something that I do regularly with my team. We have internal hackers because we have a large security program, probably larger than most institutions, but you still can hire third parties to do it, which we do. And I present to our board the findings of the independent groups that are trying to emulate the bad guys. So that's something you have to do as well.
And tell us a little bit about what you do. You probably have a playbook or something like that. If there is a hack, if there is an intrusion, if somehow the system is brought down either through an electrical grid shutdown or through an EHR shutdown, what kind of plans are deployed at that point?
So that's another great question. So from a playbook perspective, we exercise, both through tabletop exercises and also through actual failover testing, as we refer to it. Systems going down, you have to be able to do that. You have to tier your systems, identify the most critical. From an electronic health record perspective, we work with our vendor to simulate events, including failing over from one data center to another. Right now, we are actually reviewing how we would handle a ransomware event, and if it were to be of the sort that have been threatened against U.S. hospitals. And we're asking ourselves, do we do enough? We actually hired an independent party to look at our ransomware preparedness, including our playbooks, and they came back with some recommendations in terms of enhancing how we do, as one example, offsite backup, right? So one of the things we see with the attackers, and this was true of the situation in Vermont, they basically go after your backups. And so you've got to have backups that are segregated or air gapped, as some people refer to it, from your primary data centers or your EHR vendors' data centers, so that if something happens, you can restore and get up and running quickly. But start with tabletops and then get to a point where you're doing actual failover testing and simulations.
All right, that's immensely helpful. Well, look, I really appreciate the words of wisdom here. Thank you very much, Jennings, for joining us, especially on such short notice.
Sure, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. You too.